Hey, we're celebrating the 200th episode of the Church Revitalization Podcast. Glad you're with us. Here it comes right now.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the 200th episode of the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. Yeah, I feel like maybe in post, I'll add some royalty-free celebration music that's happening.
We don't have a budget for that.
We don't. Yeah. What can I find for free that I won't get a copyright ding on YouTube? No, we're celebrating today 200 episodes. AJ, you and I started this podcast in the fall of 2019. Actually,
right? August of 2019.
I think maybe the episodes we maybe started working on it in August, and maybe the first episodes launched at the end of August or beginning of September, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was, we've mentioned this before on the podcast, but it was kind of like a, hey, what if we did this? And so here we are all this time later, 4 years almost. And how many weeks have we missed in that time frame, AJ?
We literally are just about a month away. We've missed 4 episodes. We've skipped 4 times in 4 years, not doing a weekly episode.
It's pretty good. Yeah. Now we've not cheated, but we've tried to make life easier sometimes. Like literally this 200th episode, we are recording on the same day that we recorded episode 198 and 199, as you'll notice by the same outfits from the last 2 episodes. If you're watching on YouTube. But we've been faithful to do this, and we want to thank you listeners for doing this. We want to throw some statistics at you, and we kind of debated, AJ and I, before we started recording this, like, what do we want to share? And here's the thing, I told AJ we should be we're like your church in the sense that when you're starting something new or you're building something, it takes time for things to grow, and we shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed of how the things have grown. And it really has. It's been really cool to see. So we want to celebrate some of those growth statistics with you. And we're proud of them because we put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into building this thing. So what's the stat you want to throw out first, AJ?
Yes, I just on the well, no, you know what? Let's save the podcast. Here's a couple of YouTube stats first.
Okay. Hey, before you share them,
yeah.
YouTube is something that we've only really, I would say we're only still giving marginal attention to, like we're just barely caring. We thought, let's at least do the bare minimum to start trying to build an audience on YouTube. And we've only been working on that for a year. So this is not something that we've been doing for all 200 episodes.
And you're using the term working rather loosely. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Bare minimum.
We've given it some attention in the last year. And I think we're a little over 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. That's pretty cool. 1,200 of those have come in the last year.
We're one shy of 1,600.
Oh,
as of this recording. Yeah.
Oh man. Hey, somebody hurry up, go over there and go click subscribe so that by the time we're done with this, we'll be there. Yeah. We've had 1,900 hours watched over there. That sounds like a lot to me. I don't know if that's good.
This is just in the last year, by the way.
Yeah. And so the channel has grown by 379%. That's pretty cool. So we're happy to have all of you YouTubers over there. Typical episode, for us in like a week or so is going to probably run 20 to 100 views or something, in a week after its release. So we're happy to have you guys over there. Hope you enjoy the video version of the podcast. All right, so back to the podcast itself.
Hey, Scott, sorry, I want to before we move on to YouTube really fast. So of the right now almost 1,600 subscribers, we had 400 at the beginning in 365 days ago. So 1,200 have come in the last 3. Oh my God, that's pretty good. Like I'm pretty happy with that. But anyways, I just want to say, like, and that's putting the bare minimum. Like I don't want to say what we're going to do because I don't want to commit something. But I'm hopeful actually that we've been building up a small base of subscribers that we're going to be able to begin to do more on YouTube in the future. Not committing to any specific action or timeline, but I'm glad we've been putting in that bare minimum effort because I think that's going to pay dividends here in the months and years to come.
I like the YouTube. I think that's a fun space over there. All right, podcast, Scott. Podcast. You ready for some numbers here?
Yes. Well, I know them, but
let's share them. Podcast, you could have pretended that you didn't. That would have been exciting.
I mean,
the podcast has been downloaded over 100,000 times since we started 4 years ago.
Yeah,
that's
and
that's a pretty cool number.
Yeah, and the majority of those have come in the last 2 years. So the growth on that's been really good. We've been really pleased. It started very small and it has gained momentum.
Yeah. And also, this is to me one of the most fun stats though, because remember back 2019, we're talking pre-COVID. And this is also just, I think, another cool testimony to God's faithfulness and to God giving us a vision for ministry. And, I mean, years even prior to 2019, we had a vision for our ministry to go outside the United States, to go globally. And in 2019, that was not necessarily any greater on our radar than it was in 2015 or 2018 or any time prior to that. But not only did we launch the podcast, which can be heard anywhere in the world, we also recorded a bunch of training, Scott, that fall for the first time and had that available, which anything that is recorded then digitally is available for anybody around the world. So then we have COVID, and immediately the need to have these digital resources became exponentially more necessary. And so not even having an eye for anyone outside of the United States ever hearing the podcast, it has been heard in the last 4 years, Scott, in 175 countries. 90% of the recognized nations on planet Earth have downloaded the Church Revitalization podcast. And just in the last 2 years, we've begun visiting as many of those as we can get to, because people are wanting to gain training and resources and improve their church health. So that's just mind-blowing to me. I love that.
It is cool. Yeah, it's really neat. Some of them, those numbers are small, but for more than I would have expected are active in downloading the podcast on a regular basis. And it's fun to see that not just the depth of growth in terms of numbers, but also the breadth of growth is really cool. And it's one of those, as you said, one of those happy byproducts of COVID, if there was any. I really do believe that. I believe that the Lord was preparing us to have a vision for what our ministry would look like, not just in terms of scale and working with churches outside the United States, but delivery systems. We were having a vision. I can remember some very specific conversations that you and I had in like December and January of 2019 and 2020, before even COVID, we even knew what COVID was, or even it hit the news. And we started laying the groundwork for those things, and we're able to start executing. So it's cool. The Lord orchestrates those things and puts maybe just a side point, but not every idea that you have is your idea. Just know that you may hear it in your own voice, but it comes from the Lord. And you should follow those things and execute on them if you are fairly certain it's from the Lord. And that was one that we did, and we couldn't have known that. Groundwork was being laid for us to be able to work with churches internationally and to work more economically with churches here in the United States as well.
Yeah, that's true. That was another significant byproduct of those decisions that has really paid off. Hey, okay, all right. So we actually do have a real episode here for you, not just us patting ourselves on the back.
Patting ourselves on the back. and I don't even feel like it's that. Like I don't feel like we're patting it.
I don't feel that way either.
We
I
worked
really
hard,
do. Yeah.
But
for sure.
Don't feel like we can take any credit for any of it. So
yeah, this is totally a celebration to what God has done in our ministry. We feel blessed by it, and hope to and seek to be a blessing to others. And that's exciting and that's fun and that's worthy of celebration, because God is good. So here are the top 5 topic wise. The largest had the largest downloads or interactions. These were just the topics that I became the most significant in the last 4 years. That and some of these we've done multiple episodes on, and which continue to show us, hey, this is a topic that people do care about, or they're interested in, or they feel like they need help in. So, are we doing from 5 to 1, Scott? What are we doing?
I think we should. Yeah, let's go from 5 to 1.
5 to 1. Okay. 5 to 1. All right. So number 5 then on the top 5 from the 200 episodes is how to attract younger people to your church. This is a topic that we get frequently. Not only do we hear this, just in questions after putting an episode out, but just in our physical work with churches on site somewhere in the country or in the world. The question is, because a lot of the churches we work with, the average age of those attending is increasing. The question is, how in the world are we going to get younger people interested again in being here, in worshiping with us, in participating in our ministries? And how can we minister to people of all those ages? It is a very common topic that we have. And so, I guess we should have noted maybe what episode numbers we had on these, Scott. But that'll be in the show notes. When you go to malforsgroup.com/200, there'll be links there to get back into these previous episodes.
I'll pull it up while we're talking here. I'll get it pulled up so that when we get to number 4, I can give you those.
By the time we get to the next point. But the necessity to be able to minister to people of all ages is a primary one in the church. I mean, this is, unless you are in a super niche geography, really, that's it. And we actually have had that. Then, likely around you is a variety of age groups. I mean, that's just kind of the way the world works. And so being able to have ministries that can really help people in various life stages, and seasons of life is obviously an important topic, because you guys ask about it a lot. And so, the hard part about that is that the answer often is that you need to do some things differently, which is frequently an answer to a lot of questions that we get in the church, working with churches, especially that are in decline, is you have to wake up to the fact that the world has changed. How people communicate is different. The interests that people have even changes over time as culture evolves. And so doing the same thing that you've always done frequently becomes what the barrier is. And the answer to that doesn't mean going back and doing what we did 20 years ago when we had more people. The answer means coming up with a new solution for today, because the young people of today are not the young people of 20 or 30 years ago or more. And so it's not an easy answer, but it's a frequently asked question.
Yeah. So that episode is episode that came out on February 9th, 2022. Like I said, most of our growth has come in the last 2 years. So, spoiler alert, the top 5 episodes are all things from the last 2 years. That was episode 126 of the Church Revitalization Podcast. And you can read the show notes there at malforsgroup.com/126 and listen to that episode. It's 33 minutes and 38 seconds, or watch it on YouTube. And the focus of that episode was about how we can optimize what we're already doing to attract younger folks to the church. And what it doesn't mean is getting all tatted up, and pretending to be something that you're not. It's simply about taking what you're doing and having a vision for the young people, in your community and taking what you have and seeing what God will do. I was thinking about this, AJ. This isn't in that episode, but I was speaking at a church a couple of weeks ago, and I was reflecting on this idea. Very often we feel like what we have isn't enough. Well, we're old. You might think we're old. So we can't do this. And it reminded me of the disciples being with Jesus, and Jesus has been teaching the crowd, and it's getting to be late in the day and everyone's hungry. And they're saying, hey, Jesus, we've got to send all these people home. We don't have the food, and we don't have the money to feed all these people. And Jesus is like, what do you have? You feed them. He tells them, you feed them. And so I don't know. I just encourage you, if this is a topic you're interested in, definitely go listen to that episode. But just be encouraged to think, well, what do we have? Because very often God can take what you have, which in your mind isn't enough, and it can be enough.
Yeah. It can be. Yeah. He can multiply it. If you have a heart for this vision, for the change, if you're earnestly seeking the Lord in prayer, then I think he answers those prayers. So yeah, 100%. Use what you have and work towards what you want.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Number four, man, 3 keys to transformational worship services. So we've done a couple of episodes on first impressions and worship service organization. This particular one was episode 124.
Okay.
But this is where so much focus and attention is, right? Especially from people new to your church, and yes, this is the strong majority of the time their introduction to your church. So, and I don't actually, Scott, I don't remember what the 3 things were in this episode, but most commonly what we talk about in effective worship services is creating an environment in which the overall message can be heard. And there's a lot of aspects to that, and we've gotten into that in a couple of different episodes of worship services. But at the end of the day, what your goal is for people to meet God, to feel his presence, to interact, not that it would be one-sided, that they would be consumers of an event, but they would be interactive in prayer and in our spirit, in our voice, and that when they leave there, the message that you really felt God had for them to hear is heard and understood. So you really can boil down a worship service into just a few significant elements that we need to do well in and be effective. And this is something, again, that the feedback and by virtue of the number of people that watched the video or downloaded the episode, that it's important to you too, because we do spend so much time focusing on what we're going to do on any particular Sunday. So yeah, 3 keys to transformational worship services, Scott.
I'll lay the 3 keys on you.
Okay.
Real fast.
Okay.
Number 1, you got to get the environment right. So when you walk in, what do people feel? That's the question. What do people feel when they walk in? We're not trying to make this emotional, but you are trying to create an environment where people might be receptive to the gospel. Mm-hmm. And when you throw a whole bunch of obstacles in their way, like things being broken or dirty or smelly, you are creating obstacles between them and the gospel. So that's the first one. The second one is to get to how do we say it? Be intentional with the experience. So just thinking about, what is that experience like? I'm not talking about an emotional experience necessarily, but how do I interact or engage with the service? When do I stand? When do I sit? What language am I using? These kinds of things, so that you're thinking about that worship experience or that worship service from the pew and not this from the pulpit perspective. And then the third one is really drilling down on that message, making sure your message is clear. Don't have 15 points. I mean, this really is your opportunity to drive something home, and people will respond. When the message is clear, people will respond. This is what Paul says, right? If the trumpet doesn't sound a clear call, who will respond? And I've heard a lot of sermons where I'm like, what exactly were you trying to say? And I try to model this when you invite me to come to your church. I try to be sure I don't have 10 points. I have 1 point, and then I'm trying to put scaffolding around that singular point. But if you tuned out for 20 out of 35 minutes, it would be impossible for you to miss the central point. And so making sure then that everything from the environment to the experience exists to support that point, not just the message itself. So those are the three things, and we go into more detail in that episode.
Yeah. And that was episode 124. All right. Our third most popular topic on the podcast, 5 roadblocks to a healthy church board. So it's kind of interesting. In general, I don't think church boards are the primary topic whenever we're meeting with, prospective churches that we might work with. That's usually like a secondary thing that ends up being uncovered. Like, they start to reveal some clues like, okay.
We have problems here.
Yeah, that's right. But apparently it's known because it's a popular topic that people have tuned into. So
it's been a while since that was episode 95. We could probably revisit that topic.
Yeah, man. A healthy church board can be a major barrier. Not only can it be a barrier to growth, it can lead to decline in the church, and it has the power.
Did you say a healthy church board? A healthy one is a barrier?
A church board. I just meant a board.
Oh,
a board can be. Yeah, it can be not only a barrier to growth, but the resultant decline. And conversely, a healthy board, a board also, when healthy, can drive significant ministry growth. So, there's a lot that can happen with a small group of leaders in the future of the church, in a positive way or a negative way. So it is a vital topic, probably doesn't get as much attention as it should in helping people to really maximize how that board works and what it's achieving.
Yeah, I won't rehash the whole episode for you. I really would love for you to go back and listen to it. Episode 95, malfirstgroup.com/95. I'll just hit you with point number 1 real quick, because I think it's a good one. I think it's one of the most common errors, is that a board is seen to represent a constituency versus shepherding the flock. And we take Acts chapter 6 and show how, in actuality, the problem in Acts 6 is that it seemed like the Hebraic Jews, the native Jews there, were getting preferential treatment over the Hellenistic Jews. And so if they had strictly gone towards a representative group, there would have been maybe almost a percentage mix, like a representative mix of deacons to represent the Hebraic Jews and the Hellenistic Jews. But in actuality, when the votes were in, it was almost all Hellenistic Jews that ended up being elected as deacons, and they served faithfully. They served well. They served equitably and fairly. They didn't mistreat the native Jews. They treated them fairly, as well as taking care of the Hellenistic Jews. And so, because the goal is to shepherd the flock, not to represent a constituency, and that is something we see a lot in churches. Is sometimes it's organized that way. You're the deacon for, or if it's a church with elders, that you are the elder for youth. You are the elder for women, for women's and men's ministry. You are the elder for children's ministry. And the intention is pure in a sense that you want to have someone who is overseeing an area of ministry. But what can often happen is they end up being the rep for them, and they're advocating for that thing versus what's best for the whole church. And so that can lead to infighting and dysfunction. So this is a great episode with a lot of really good, helpful tips. I would encourage you to go back, listen to it, episode 95.
Okay, marching our way to the top. Number 2, why people don't volunteer at your church. And everybody listening just said, amen. Tell us how to solve that problem. It's pretty amazing that this isn't number 1, Scott, which will help kind of drive home number 1. because everybody listening is thinking, yeah, man, I need more volunteers. So this was episode 109. We've done a few episodes on volunteerism in the church, but you could tune into 109 and check that out. Gosh, there's a lot of aspects to why people don't volunteer. I don't think you can bring this down into like, hey, do this, and that'll be it. There's no smoking gun, and there's some simple things though that can be done, just in changing language and how we talk about things. So definitely head over there and look at that, because and we're not going to go through all those points today. I don't know if there's anything you want to necessarily highlight about that, Scott, but we are very aware that volunteering in the church is a significant topic for you, the listener.
Yeah. This, to me, it's one of the most solvable problems. And so, we have had several episodes on volunteer development, leadership development, and leadership recruitment. It's a personal passion of mine. I think it's one of the most solvable problems. But it is like the hitch and the giddy up for a lot of churches. And my one point I'd want to make that's echoed in this article is, you mentioned it, AJ, is communication. The way in which we talk about volunteer recruitment very often is the thing that's killing our ability to recruit well.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot that could be said about that. I'll leave it at that for now. But you should definitely go and read this. Or if you're really struggling, sales pitch, reach out to us and we'll talk about Leadership Pipeline. Because trust me, I can put you in touch with any number of churches I've worked with on Leadership Pipeline who will tell you, I wish we had done this. This was worth every dime that we poured into it, and every hour we put into it. It transforms churches by investing in building Leadership Pipeline.
Well, even that thing. I mean, you just used the word volunteer and leadership in the same sentence, and they're probably, especially with some newer listeners that haven't been listening for a long time, don't know how closely related those terms are. And so that right there could be a point that they may have thought about leaders and building leaders and volunteers and growing volunteers as not connected things, two separate tasks in the church. And
or tangentially connected, not intricately connected.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So as I said, the volunteer thing came in at number 2, which I'm surprised wasn't number 1. So this really highlights how big of an issue number 1 is. Are you ready, Scott?
I couldn't be
ready. You look very anticipatory. 5 reasons you have an apathetic congregation. That was the top topic of the Church Revitalization podcast in the last 200 episodes. Apathy in the congregation. And this is super interesting. And even in the last few months, Scott, as we, from time to time, we review previous episodes, like, hey, what were some of the popular topics that we might need to go deeper on? We began to see, wow, the term apathy is a term that people are clicking into. And I think it's fascinating, but in our real world experience, we see it as well. And it's in a lot of these questions. We were just talking about volunteering. People have this sense of apathy in volunteering. Leadership in the church perceives apathy as the reason for a lack of volunteers. Apathy might show up in board that we just mentioned, as our number 3 topic. Is the board apathetic? Worship services. Sometimes we get the feedback that the congregation feels apathetic. How come they're not engaged in our worship service more? Apathy, even in either losing younger people, they seemed apathetic, they left, or our current congregation, which might be older, seems apathetic, and that's why we're not attracting younger people. It permeates the church, and it's a cancer. Apathy is a cancer, and it's combated in Scripture, and it's combated with leadership, and in our attitudes and how we view God, how we view His mission for the church. And I'm glad, Scott, over the last few months, this has become more apparent to us because I think we can be more focused to help resource people to combat it.
Totally. I mean, I think we have a culture, especially in the West. I don't want to speak to how it might be in other places, but in the cultural West, we have a culture that's built for apathy because it's skeptical of everything, and it's jaded, and it's privileged, and it's comfortable. And so it's primed for apathy. It's primed for feeling like I don't need God. I don't need the church. I have everything I need. Why would I care? It's Netflix and chill. It's sit on your phone and text all day. It's disengaged. It's I need a mental health day. It's why should I have to work so hard? It's it's all these things.
Yeah.
And it's a culture-wide problem that has infected the church. Even just a lack of ambition. People don't have goals anymore. They don't have dreams for their life. They don't have any of these things, and it's ungodly. I mean, like, you can have selfish ambition, but ambition for the Lord isn't certainly, I think about David. Like, he has this zeal for the Lord, and he has this passion, this ambition to build a temple in Jerusalem that's ultimately, passed on to Solomon. Yeah, I mean, you can think of a million examples of godly ambition in the Bible. And we have a culture that lacks any of that. I think it's one of the greatest tools of the enemy in Western culture is robbing people of ambition through distraction. And so it doesn't surprise me that this is number one topic. You're right. It's a theme that actually weaves all through the top 5 topics. And so many of the things that we talk about on this podcast, that apathy is a tool of the enemy that is being effectively wielded against the church and against our culture as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, it is interesting too. You did mention, like a bit of an, not sure how much outside of the US we see this. And I can tell you, it's not as much, which is one of the things that has developed my passion for working with churches outside of the US, because I see
you're giving up on the ones here. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I mean, we're obviously we're invested in the US. But one of the things that I appreciate about working, especially with churches in developing countries, is the apathy is not there. There's a zeal, there's a passion, there's a desire for growth in the church. There's a hunger, and it took me a while to kind of put my finger on, like, what am I experiencing here? Why does this feel so different? And that's it. So I think it is primarily a Western experience of apathy in the church. And it's super unfortunate. It's disheartening. And and
it's self-defeating, and it leads to cultural suicide is what it does.
Oh man, well said. Yeah.
I mean, how do you progress? And I don't mean that in the progressive sense. I mean, how do you move forward at all as a society and a culture when nothing matters? Do you have did you ever watch this is probably I shouldn't get off on this tangent. Have you ever watched The Never-Ending Story, that movie from the 80s?
I saw it back in the 80s on HBO many times, and I've actually been wanting to. My kids have never seen it. I've been wanting to see it again because I think I might have a certain level of nostalgia for it if I watched it again.
Yeah.
No, have you seen it recently?
Scenes, no, but one of my favorite scenes from that movie, and I'm apologize to everyone who hasn't seen this, and you should definitely find somewhere online to go watch it. But what's the Atreyu? Is that the
something like that? I don't know anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
Some weird name. Yeah.
Okay. The boy who goes on this quest, he's going through this mud, right? Trying to get somewhere, and he encounters the big turtle. You know what scene I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember it enough. No, sorry.
Oh, what is it? Oh, it's like the Sea of Despond, or it's like I don't know. He's going through this swamp of despair, and there's this big turtle, and the turtle is so negative. He's like trying to ask the turtle question. The turtle knows everything, but doesn't care about anything. And it's like the whole world is falling apart. It's being absorbed by the nothing. Like, I'm sorry, this is so nerdy. And this turtle knows the solution to the problem. Like, he knows what would save their world. And he just says, not that it matters, but this, and like, that's the West. It's like, it has the answer because it has this connection to the truth, but it doesn't care. And it's just totally willing to get swallowed by despair. And I'm like, I don't know. So go watch the movie sometime. It's such a really keen insight into what contemporary society is, to have this connection to the truth, but not to care about it.
Yeah.
And just get swallowed up by the nothing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Random movie with Scott Paul from the 80s.
Well, yeah, it does help drive the point though, in what a danger apathy is. And it is unfortunate, and we're gonna continue to try to combat that with resources and insight that hopefully can help you in your church. And would love some feedback on this as well. I mean, you can comment below if you're over at malforsgroup.com/200. You can comment on that article down there, or over on YouTube if you're watching over on YouTube.
Sorry, can I interject one more thing? I think that some people might say, well, then we just need more optimism. And optimism it's not quite right. Optimism, I think, is like Fantasyland. That's not the solution. Is not optimism. Optimism is like wish casting and like wishing for something to be true that isn't necessarily true. Because I think people, the easy thing to do is to look at people who are optimistic and shoot them down with some facts and some straight logic, right? The solution to apathy isn't optimism. It's biblical hope. The Bible doesn't describe biblical hope as wishing or optimism. It's confidence in something that you know to be true that has not yet come to pass. It's confidence. It's not wishing. It's confidence in a promise of God, which is totally different. And it's not like, yes, it's stepped out on faith, but it's not irrational. It's like you can look to what God has done in the past and have confidence in his promises and to stand on those things. That is not irrational. It's not optimism. Just want to throw that out there. Like, if you're dealing with, oh man, I'm surrounded by people who are apathetic, and you're trying to combat that with optimism, you'll never win. You have to combat it with biblical hope, which is rooted in the truth and confidence in God's promises. Not like, hey, I'm hoping, I'm wishing, I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah,
work.
the disease of apathy can temporarily find solace in the Band-Aid of optimism, but only can it be cured by the truth of Christ in Scripture. So, there you go.
We need to do a whole nother episode on this. I got like 18,000 thoughts now in my head about.
And we probably will, because we always need another
popular.
For another week. Look out. We might have 4 episodes. We'll have an apathy series coming up really soon, and you'll know that it stemmed from this one. But all right, Scott, any parting words, any final thoughts on 200 episodes?
No, it's been a fun 200 episodes. When you start something like a podcast, especially the way that we do it, where we don't do it in seasons, there is always this question of like, so is this just something that we do for forever? And the answer is, I don't know. I I hope you get at least another 200 episodes of us, and maybe we'll make some changes. We're always trying to think of small adjustments that we can make. But in as much as we've been doing this so far, and as much as you all keep listening, we'll keep making the episodes.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, you can go to malfirstgroup.com/200 to see what the top 5 were. And we've got links there to previous episodes that go a little bit deeper on those topics. And once again, we're thankful for you. We wouldn't be doing this if from 4 years ago, the numbers never took off, the downloads never began to climb.
If that line, we've had down months.
Yeah.
But every year has been up and to the right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. In the total year.
If that wasn't the trend line, I assure you we would have given up on this a long time ago. So totally. Thanks for listening and tuning in and reading the articles and all that stuff. We're in ministry because you're in ministry, and we're here to be a help to you. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for 200, and we'll start counting again 201 next week. See you then.